Jesus born during the period of the Roman Empire. The Jews felt that Jesus was coming to deliver them from the grips of the Roman Empire, and Jesus came and he never did that. He rather was killed, and then a movement came out and were preaching in his name and said he's establishing the kingdom and he's the king, and they called themselves Christians, or they didn't even call themselves Christians, they said they are disciples. And the Jews started persecuting them because they felt that they are not true. Then they went outside Jerusalem, went to the other places to witness. They also felt that they are against their religions, they are against their traditional way of worship. So they also started persecuting them, followed by the state itself. The state as a religion, the state, because Rome became was now in control. The emperor, the Caesar himself, proclaimed himself as God, and people were supposed to worship him. So he was known as king. And as a state, they saw Christianity to be against the state, because they were also proclaiming another king, Jesus. So they also joined in the persecution. And that led us to the monasteries. And the monasteries were there to preserve the faith, as the church was often under persecution. So for 300 years, the church was under severe persecution. But within these 300 years, Roman Empire was beginning to suffer some problems. It wasn't united again. There were divisions. The east and the west of Europe was divided. You know, they didn't consider Africa and other things. They just added them. They added them to the east or the west, wherever. Yeah, they just added all those places. Their influence, their dominance. So it was the east and the west of Europe, including Palestine and then Asia and other places that they went to. They added all those areas to the east and the west. They just had 2 blocks. So they were fighting among themselves in these 2 blocks. They had a leader here and a leader there, representing the 2 Roman empires. And when one was able to fight the other, he would want to have influence on the east, so that the east, he would want to hold the 2 together. So 300 years the church have been going through persecution until this period. This man called Constantine came into the scene. Who was Constantine at all? Our study begins by asking the question, did the Christian movement convert Roman Empire, or was it the empire that subverted Christianity? That is the Roman. The Roman Empire. All right, that is a question to debate on. But it is said that during the reign of Diocletian, the divided empire was said that Galerius was Caesar, and he was second in command while handing over the western half of the empire to Maximian, who chose Constantius to be Caesar alongside him. So 2 empires, the east and the west. Constantius was Caesar of the west. Constantius took charge of the furthermost western edge of the empire, basing himself in York. Does that name look familiar?
Yeah.
York.
Yeah, sure.
Just close to us here. Yeah. So you can imagine that the western representative of the Roman Empire was living just here. Meanwhile, they call themselves Roman Empire. So you see the influence. They covered all this area. They called themselves Roman. And he was just living in York here.
That's for the real. He was here.
Yeah, yes, he was. He lived here in those days. And then you go there, you see some of the cathedrals. The old cathedral gives you the history of some of those things. He said, then we have this. Before we come that, let me give you some information here. So Constantius, who was in charge of the West, finally also died. He had a son. And he says his son was called Constantine, whose mother was called Helena. And it says Constantine's mother was a Christian. Somehow, his mother influenced him, because it says his mother was a Christian. But what happened is Constantius divorced Constantine's mother and remarried. So when he did, he banished Helena, Constantine's mother, and his children, and they were gone. So he had someone who would have been the next. But unfortunately for him, when he wasn't there, it was Constantine himself that came back to the West. And he immediately assumed role of the Western Europe, and fought his way through to maintain, because he felt that he had the right to rule, to take over from his father. So he fought his way through to maintain, and the people liked him. So they sort of legally endorsed him as the next Caesar for the West. So when he succeeded in having the West, he now was thinking of how he could also fight against the East Empire, Caesar, so that he could have dominion and to put the two together, so that the Roman Empire would be united again. And they started to go into that battle. It is said that Constantine, whilst he was getting ready to go into that battle, that was where he had a dream. And in that dream, he had a vision, and he says the sign of the cross appeared. And he says, by this sign, he would conquer. And he knew that God was telling him that his faith in Christ, whatever it was going to give him the victory. So they immediately created the sign of the cross, the sign of Christos, in emblem as logos for the uniforms of the soldiers and everything. They were quite a few. Their soldiers weren't that many, and the other was too many, even though they went to battle. And true to what God wanted to do, Constantine defeated the other side. And when he defeated the other side, he now had control over the East and the West. It was after his defeat, then he now gave a decree that no one should persecute the Christians again. So can you imagine what would have been to the joy of what? The church. Those who were in monasteries for the fear of their life and other things, the state was now supporting them. And so that is the beginning of how the church started having the liberty to at least exist as a church, to be recognized. It said to be recognized as an official religion, because there and then it wasn't recognized. It was after Constantine that they recognized Christianity as an official religion. Because it says that Constantine saw what was in Christianity and the influence that the church had in almost all the empire. They go to any place at all, the church is there, a church is there, a church. He said, if I want to do anything, I simply call the bishops, give them a message, they send me and go and talk to the congregations, and then my work is done. So he saw that. He saw the church as an opportunity where he could be able to influence his empire, using the church as a means of doing that. No doubt he immediately got involved with the church. When he gave the freedom that no one should persecute Christians, he went ahead by trying to organize them, by asking them to come together and hold a council and discuss the differences they had, because by this time, the East and the West also had differences in theology. These people say Jesus is God. These people say, no, he is not God. These people say, this is what salvation is. These people say, no. They say, okay, you come together, and I will sponsor that. The state will pay for your transport and your hotel, your living costs whilst you are in the meeting. Come and sit down and talk so that you can have unity. You can come together. That was the beginning of Constantine's involvement. And not only that, it is said that from that time onwards, anytime Constantine went to another community, the Roman Empire went to another community, and they conquered the place, they would simply also ask them to leave their religion and become Christians by bringing a priest to teach them the Bible. So the priest didn't go there to witness in order to get them saved. He only went there because the state had conquered the place. And so salvation now was no longer by people confessing their sins, but something like, it was like by compulsion. And that is the weakness of it, because it's like people were now becoming Christians, not because they chose to be, but because they were forced to. And to come back to our question about Muslims, if you look at the Muslim state, they are there not because they have chosen to be there, but they are forced. It's a political, the Muslim belief is a political religion.